A couple of years ago at Hobart, this really happened. We had a father break into the computer lab, trying to steal computers, having his children help him. Well, clearly, am I going to try for his children? Of course I am. Am I going to do everything I can to teach these kids to lead honorable lives of decency and integrity? Of course I am. But in that family situation, what are my odds of success? None. Not if they're being raised like that. I had a wonderful kid last year who did a wonderful job in my class, but I had to drive him home most nights to an empty house. His father was not there. His mom, God bless her, had a graveyard shift. He never saw her. He went home to an empty house every night and usually never had dinner. Clearly, this child is at a disadvantage. And when I'm told, as teachers have been told, this is real language here, I was told at a Common Core meeting that my number one goal as a teacher is to prepare my students to be a part of the international workforce. Really? When I have a 10-year-old who's hungry, I'm sorry, the international workforce is the farthest thing from my mind. I want this kid to be healthy, happy, and to have an absolute belief that his life can get better with some of the things I'm going to show him. And that's why I wrote Real Talk. The reality is there's no place like home. When you have parents, and I have many parents who are supportive and work with me and support me, oh my gosh, teaching is glorious. But to say that there aren't every year some very difficult family situations, and when teachers are told you have to solve all that child's problems, it's not so. Nobody does it, and anybody who says they reach every child is either lying to you or lying to themselves.
So this is kind of a tough thing for teachers to think about, but how do you come to this idea of, when is it necessary? Is it necessary to leave some children behind?
It is definitely necessary to leave some children behind. There is no question about it. And I'm not talking about children struggling in a subject. I'm talking about behavior. Let's talk about how permissive we've gotten. I had a student who just told me this 2 weeks ago. Former student of mine, wonderful student, astonishingly great kid, about to start high school. Such a great kid that he won a scholarship at Duke University to go to an elite science camp. Only 90 kids from the country get to go. What an adventure. 2 weeks at Duke, great science projects every day, learning about life on the road. What could be better? Only 90 from the country selected. And every kid had letters from their particular teacher. Oh, this is the most wonderful kid in the world. On the first day of his camp, he told me, because when he came back, I said, how great was it? He said, the classes were great. The selection process was awful. I said, what do you mean, David? He said, the first day, one of the 90 kids broke into a dormitory of the other students, opened up their suitcases, trashed their room, destroyed their clothing, and threw it all over the dormitory as a prank. And I said, what was the consequence? He said, they just told the kid to apologize. I said, wait a minute, they didn't send this kid home? Nope. Come on. When that kid isn't sent home, it is a disservice to every child who goes to that camp and does the right thing. What happens these days is we spend so much time trying to save that one or two incorrigible children that there are terrific kids that you never notice in class who don't get attention. One of the things I've written about in this book, here's a wonderful tip for teachers. I met a great teacher in Chicago. On the first day of school, when she comes home, she gets out a pencil and she writes down everybody in her class she remembers. And then she looks at her roll book and makes a list of every kid she didn't remember. Those are the kids she focuses on for the year. Because who do we remember? We remember the kids with their hands up, and we remember the kids who've driven us crazy. What about the kids that no one notices? So many of them are capable, wonderful kids if we just paid a little attention. My class, there's a very funny line. One of the kids once told a reporter from Time magazine, and I will clean up the language, but the Time magazine reporter said to this kid, I watch you guys and you really tune in on Rafe. but he's quiet, he's soft-spoken, what's the secret? And she said, well, Rafe doesn't yell and scream, but you got to understand, everybody in this room knows, don't F with Rafe. Because he will take you out. And I will. If you're hitting your neighbor or cussing out the kid next to you or being rude, you don't get to be in a Shakespeare play. You can blow your lines. I don't care about that. Sing off key. Who cares? But if you don't have the courtesy to respect your classmates, sorry, no. If you tell other players on your baseball team you suck because they strike out, you're not playing on my team that day. I will absolutely leave a child behind. Do we open the door the next day? Of course we do. Do we open the door every day? Absolutely. We can never give up on even the most incorrigible child. Optimism is the foundation of every good teacher. But to say that all the children are golden drops of sunshine and everybody gets to go on the trip and everybody gets to come on the bus, that's absurd. And I would suggest that the people who say that don't teach.
So when you do confront these problem or challenging children, how do you approach it? Can you walk us through, when things get bad, what do you do as a teacher?
Happened today. You would be surprised at how little I talk to those children. I have a child in our class who he's mean. I mean, he's really mean. He chokes people, he kicks people, he trips people, and he's been doing it for about 4 years. Counselors have talked to him and everything. Here's the reality. He's been talked to for 4 years. Clearly, he has issues. Do I want to help him? Of course I do. But we were making rugs today. And I said to him, we're about to start making rugs. I've got you this beautiful rug. Looks like you're off to a good start. Tell me what's going to happen if you bother your neighbor. He said, I'm going to be taken out. And I said, faster than you can say William Shakespeare. Within 2 minutes, he grabbed the yarn of the kid next to him and threw all her yarn all over the room. I said, come here, buddy. Here's a place for you to watch the others, and you can watch for an hour. And he watched. Did I have a long talk with him? Absolutely not. I have students to work with, kids who are doing a good job, kids who need my help making their rugs. At the end of the day, he said, can I do my rug tomorrow? I said, absolutely. But as he left, I said, what's going to happen if you misbehave? He said, I don't get to do my rug. I said, I'm glad you understand. That was it. No long conversation, no trying to understand how he's feeling. You don't get to do that, and I don't care what your home situation is. You don't get to hit your classmates. I'm sorry. My students don't run my classroom, I do.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the role of arts education in the classroom. The core of a lot of your teaching, of course, has been the Shakespeare program, and you use the arts to teach all kinds of lessons that apply to real life.
I do?
Yes, you do. And I would like to talk a little bit about, there have been, tons of cuts in LAUSD as well as other districts across the country. And how have you seen that play out in the classroom over the past few years?
Well, it's been horrible. Hobart last year lost their orchestra. They took out the orchestra. Unbelievable. We have plenty of money for other things, which I don't understand, but we don't have money for an orchestra teacher. I have a great principal, and he ran around like crazy. He got some people to come in to teach some music. But it's not the same thing as having an orchestra. How does this hurt? First of all, anybody who knows about music, kids that play music do better in math. It's a fact. And all the 4th grade teachers this year met, because we just got our test scores, and all of them said, this is the worst math we've ever had. And these are good teachers. And they said, we taught it the same way. We had good kids. And I can't prove it, but I got to tell you, I think the fact that kids aren't going to orchestra has hurt their math skills. I do. That's why I'm so passionate about teaching music. This year I'm learning to play the bagpipes because we're doing this really cool song for the Shakespeare play. So every year I have to learn new musical instruments. The arts, the thing that's beautiful about it, some kids are better in math than other kids. It's a fact. Doesn't mean everybody doesn't get to do math, but some kids are just going to get it. Some kids write better, and sometimes when you're teaching a lesson, some kids struggle. But when you do the arts, there's a part for everybody. It's a wonderful thing, and everybody's important. Last year when we did The Tempest, I had a little girl, and I mean little, who could barely speak English. So we gave her 4 lines. She played the captain of the ship at the beginning. You can look online. She's tiny and adorable, and you couldn't understand anything she was saying, even when she did speak the Shakespeare. She understood it, but her accent was so thick. Who cares? For this child, learning those 4 lines meant as much to her as the kid who played Prospero, who learned 1,000 lines. That's the beauty of the arts. With the music and dancing and lighting design and, of course, acting, there's a part for everybody. And the kids learn quickly. If one piece to the puzzle is missing, the play falls apart. See, if a kid leaves during math, math goes on. It makes the children feel that they're a part of something. I didn't understand this 30 years ago. I never thought that the arts would be important in my classroom. I'm a math guy. But I learned that all the children that I worked with that were involved in arts did better in school. It makes them happier, it develops relationships, it encourages them to take risks, fail, correct their mistakes, and have a whole lot of fun. So, now when you open the door after school to my classroom, kids literally fall out the door. Because one of the myths of schools is that kids hate school. No, they hate boring school. When you create something that's wonderful, everybody wants to be, it's field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. One of the myths is that parents don't care about school, that parents don't want to get involved. Not true. I have enormous support from the parents because they see their kids coming home happy and thrilled every day. And the other beauty of the arts, and I'm sorry this is a bit controversial, I'm not a great believer in homework. I'm really not. We pile homework on children now, hundreds of worksheets, where I hear about 8-year-olds staying up till 11 o'clock at night, finishing sheets, not because they're learning anything, but because they don't want to get in trouble the next day. Rather than doing worksheets, my kids play music every night. They're working on speaking Shakespeare every night, and they go to bed at 7:30 and 8. That's why they're so fresh the next day. They've had a good night's sleep, and believe me, I feel their minds have been much better trained learning how to play the Beatles or Chopin than doing a word search about finding how many ways you can spell Louisiana Purchase.
One thing that's been cut a lot with all of the arts cuts is musical instruments and teachers to teach instruments and keep up repairs and all of that. And wondering if you can talk a little bit about the value of kind of the tactile quality of learning an instrument for kids and the role that that plays.
It's so funny you say that because the proceeds from Real Talk for Real Teachers are helping me finance my class band now because we've got to have it. I just bought, and musical instruments were expensive, so I just bought 3 really good flutes for my class. I bought a trombone for one of the kids. Think about this. Forget about the music. Think about the fact that the kid has to be responsible for something. He has to take care of it. He has to be organized. He has to polish it. And the beautiful thing about holding that instrument is when he makes the mistake, he doesn't get to say, well, Rafe, well, it's on him. It's what education should be. It's totally on him. And if he doesn't like the sound of the way he's playing, then he has to practice more, doesn't he? And when the kids see other kids who are fantastic, and they say, wow, they're lucky. My kids shoot back. Luck has nothing to do with it. We're the ones who practiced for hundreds and hundreds of hours. And that's a wonderful thing that the instrument, they can actually hold it. It's not a paper, it's not a test score. They are holding something that is important to them. The other thing that I've learned about musical instruments, in my early years, I thought you were a guitarist. I thought you were a pianist. I had to learn, no, you're a musician. And many of my students, after a couple of years with me, play 8 or 10 musical instruments. And as you watch in The Tempest, one of the things the crowd loves is watching the kids run back and forth, grabbing a guitar, sitting at a keyboard, playing a flute, running over to the drums. It's hysterical, but what great fun for them. And because they're having fun, they really don't make a lot of mistakes. They're having too much fun.
And in terms of arts education, I also spend a lot of time thinking about creativity and the role that that plays in our classrooms today. Can you share your thoughts on how important that is?
Well, the wonderful thing about the arts, we have a whole expression in my classroom where I teach the kids Kohlberg's 6 levels of moral development. And the 3rd level is we do things to please people. You often see children holding up an art project. Hey, Rafe, what do you think? Do you like my art project? And I shoot back at them, why are you asking me? It's your art project. It doesn't matter what I think about it. What do you think about it? You're here to please yourself. I'm just your teacher. So leave me out of it. And again, that's the beautiful thing. I often see, and this is a very sad thing, I've gone to arts programs where if the kids weren't playing well enough, the school hires an orchestra, or they hire adults to come and sit in. Or I've seen at elementary level, when the kids play, their mentors sit with them or play along with them. If you ever go to room 56, I'm in the back corner, as you've seen. The kids are the show. They play the instruments for better or for worse. These days, it's usually for better. But the beauty of the arts is we want our kids to take personal responsibility, don't we? Nothing will teach them responsibility more than the arts. I was laughing, one of the funniest letters I ever got, when I was given the Presidential National Medal of Arts, somebody wrote to me and said, you know, Rafe, it's great, you do the art, but what our kids need is discipline. And I thought, my gosh, artists are the most disciplined people on the planet. To dance the way they can dance, to play the music they can play, to sing the harmonies, outrageous harmonies they come up with. Of course they're disciplined. And the beautiful thing about the arts, it grows and grows. In my arts program, all of the music is scored by one of my former students who's a doctor of music from Northwestern. Many of my students are now taught instruments by former students. And it's such a beautiful thing for the little ones to see kids coming back from high school and college saying, I want to be like them. And the older ones saying, well, you can be. I used to be like you. Let's get to work.
Great. Before we move to the Q&A, I'm wondering if you can share any details of this year's production of Cymbeline with us. Any sneak peeks?
Sneak peeks of Cymbeline. Let's see, what are some of the more outrageous things we're doing? Well, let's see. We're going to use Jobim. Okay, and the kids are doing some jazz music. We're doing Trista, if you know the song. We are doing Pink Floyd's Brain Damage. We are going to have Cymbeline sleep with a dead body with his head cut off, and it's going to be a funny scene, if that's a sneak peek. And I think the two songs the kids are the wildest about doing, we're going to be doing Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, Andrew's Sister Styles, with the full brass section. And we're doing, if you can believe this, Rosemary Clooney's Mambo Italiano, which the kids can, well, because part of the play's in Italy. I think Shakespeare would like Rosemary Clooney. The kids have sung the song so much, their parents are already calling me saying, Rafe, enough, because they're driving their parents crazy. But that's a good thing. It'll be a wild, wild production. One of the fun things about Cymbeline, since nobody has ever seen it or read it, we can do anything, and no one will say that's wrong.
Well, Rafe, thank you so much for everything. I look forward to everyone's comments. I think we'll go ahead and move to the Q&A. Thank you so much
Thanks
for being
for
here
coming,
with us
everybody.
tonight. Thank you. Great. So we'd like to go ahead and open it up to the audience. If anyone has questions for Rafe, we've got folks walking around with microphones. Feel free to raise your hand and weigh in.
My name is Salvador Ramos. I'm a teacher for 18 years. You mentioned something, you said something very important. I have a great support from my principal. Let's talk, they have a real talk. I cannot perform if I don't have a good leadership. Now, maybe you can tell me, yes, do miracles, take care of your room, and that's what's important. But in reality, it's important to have a leadership.
No
I
question.
cannot do it without the guidance. What's your opinion about it?
I completely agree. I've had many principals over my career. Some of them are average. One of them, sir, was so bad that if she were found dead, they would have never solved the crime because there would have been so many suspects. It's true. Is that real enough for you? My current principal, let me tell you how great he is. And you're absolutely right. My program is far better because he's the principal. Let me tell you something he did. And this is so far above and beyond the call. You're going to think, boy, are you lucky guy, Rafe. We were doing The Tempest last year, and my former students who are in middle school are part of the production. They work on Saturdays, work on the music, and they came to me and they said, Rafe, we've got a problem. We're going to have to miss a show. Why is that, I said. Well, there's a teacher at our middle school who is demanding that we come at night to do a show, and he has told us that if we don't go to his show, we will fail the entire class. And I said, wow, he would fail you the entire class for one night? And they said, yes, he's really serious. And I said, what time's the show? And they said, 8 o'clock. And I said, well, the Tempest is over by 7. Why don't I get you a car? We'll get you over to school. You can be in both shows, no problem. So they went to the teacher and they said, we'll be there by 7. And he said, no, you have to be here by 6. And they said, but our show's at 8. And he said, you have to be here by 6 or you fail the class. I told the kids, you know what, go. Miss our show for a night, we'll figure it out. I certainly don't want you to fail the class because I don't like to fight with people. That's fine. You guys got to deal with it. A couple days later was our open house and my principal comes up to me and he says, what the heck's going on over at that other school? I said, how do you know about this? He said, I know, Rafe. I know what goes on in our district. Let me take care of you. He called the school, called their principal and said, you tell that guy that you cannot fail students for a nighttime performance. Their grade is only based on their days in school, and if he pulls anything like that, he's going to deal with me. And the kids were there for the show. I mean, I didn't even ask this guy. This guy has our back all the time. It's fantastic. When I had a principal who didn't have my back, it was much harder for me. Absolutely right. And I like what you said. Yeah, you go into your classroom and do the best you can, but let's temper the reality that if you don't have good leadership, you're not going to be as effective teacher. I agree with you completely.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions? We've got one up front, I think.
The gentleman up front.
We'll get you the microphone here.
Could you stand up, please? Could you stand up? Can you stand up? I'll hold the microphone for you.
Yes, the United States has been finishing far behind many other countries. And we've tried many different things, as you pointed out. We're now on to the Common Core and so on. What is it going to take for our educational system to become the world class that we think it is, but we know it really isn't?
Well, I've been to a lot of countries. Here's what I would say. First of all, and it's not going to happen, we have to eliminate poverty because that is the number one factor for me. You know, when people talk about Finland, they go, oh, Finland's so great. Yeah, but if you take our students of the same economic strata as Finland, we do just as well as they do. Money is a much better predictor of how well a student will do than any standard you set in school. By the way, it's really interesting. I've spoken in China a lot, and this is really freaky. China is so in love with my classroom, they have built classrooms that are physical replicas of room 56. It's weird, with the same shields and banners. It's like the Twilight Zone. But here's the thing. They'll never be room 56 because those kids are so scared and they look at their teacher all the time. They don't move without the teacher. I always laugh when they say China's going to take over the world. It's not going to happen. We're the ones who invent the iPad. They can mass produce it, but we invent it because many of those countries stifle creativity. I would suggest to you that our kids who are financially well off, we're as good as any country and better than the other systems on earth. What's hurting us is we have kids with enormous amounts of poverty. The other problem, I'm sorry if this offends anybody, what we value as a society. As long as Kobe Bryant is a hero because he can shoot a basketball, I mean, he's a phenomenal basketball player, so what? The heroes are in this room. People that stand in front of kids every day and try and make their lives better, those are heroes. As long as we think the Kardashians are more important than people trying to cure cancer, I don't think we will ever have the education system that you're hoping for. We teachers are going to try like hell to change the culture, but it's an uphill struggle. And I try to be very real in this new book. Would I give up? Never. But realistically, will we have the system that you want? I don't see it happening unless we completely change what we value as a society.
Thank you, sir, for your question. Thank you.
Hi, how do you straddle the line between the culture in your classroom and a culture that is at odds with it outside of your classroom?
That's a really good question. A lot of, especially in my early years, I got the kids to what I thought was a very high level, and then they went off to middle school and just over the cliff. I thought they were tough enough to be strong, you know, to be Atticus Finch and to walk their own path. No. What I've been able to do, though, is there's a chapter in the book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I use my former students to give my current ones a vision for what's possible. Most of my really successful students do walk a different path than most of their peers in high school. They do. But then again, most of my heroes walk a different path. Huck Finn, Atticus Finch. I don't want my students to be like everybody else. I want them to be a little bit different. Most of my students don't play computer games. Most of my students don't spend 75 million hours on Facebook telling everybody how cool they are. Okay? They're doing other things. Do I always win that battle? Absolutely not. Do I lose kids to the mediocrity of many of the school situations they're in? Happens all the time. But sometimes you do amazing things where you hit a home run. And those students steal my resolve to keep going. One of the really cool things on the book tour that I did, in every city I went to, I had former students from college and even older coming to visit, sometimes with their babies in their arm, and they're doing really well. But do I always beat the culture? Absolutely not. I'm just one fellow. I think, though, as a teacher, I can at least show them an alternative way of life. I had a really wonderful student named Rudy, who's I'm going to see in a couple months, and he's a graduate of NYU. And he wrote me a letter that's in this book where he said, "You showed me a better life, an alternative way to live." It's still up for the child to walk through that door. All I can do is open it, show him the other side, and then it's up to them. But I will not push him through the door. It must be his decision.
Thank you. Thanks for that question. Got one in the back here.
Stand up. Sure. Hi, I just wanted to know what parents can do, how they can support teachers and their schools. What do you need from parents?
Well, turn off the television. The average American child watches about 7 hours a day. They now estimate that in 50% of the homes, a television is on 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. I think it's really hurting the students. I really do. Turn off your television is number one. Read with them at night, with them. The days of having kids, hey, go home and read this, it's a great book, it's over. There are too many distractions. The reasons that my students read well is we read together for over an hour a day. Every page, every word, what does this mean? What is the theme? And I try really hard to make the reading lessons exciting. I can't see because it's very dark. I think Heidi Landers is in the audience tonight, and Heidi's a wonderful friend who's watched the reading in our classroom. And you can talk to Heidi afterwards. She'll tell you what reading looks like in my classroom. You as a parent can do the same thing. What's wrong with reading as a family at night? What's wrong with everybody having a copy of the book that you're reading and talking about it for 30 minutes a night? If we want our kids to be readers, you as parents have to show them you're readers. Those are the two things. And the third thing, make sure your child's playing a musical instrument. Those are the three things that I would beg parents to do.
On the subject of reading, I'd like to throw out a question from our Public Insight Network. This was submitted ahead of time from Nicole Hasenbein. She's an English teacher who works nearby, and she works with kids who have challenges with reading and writing and wonders, how do you inspire kids to read? What's your suggestion for that for teachers?
I read with them every day, and because I've done this for a long time, I have found books that for whatever reason work with my style and my group of students. It doesn't matter what book you're reading, as long as you love that book and can connect it with the children. I tell all the kids that every great book is about you. People who watch me go, oh my God, I have to do Shakespeare too, I have to do Mark Twain too. No, you don't. What you want to show the kids is that reading is fun. Here's the horror story, and then I want to back it up to what this question is. I had a very good student, he's a wonderful guy, and he went to a gifted magnet high school. And in the 10th grade, they were reading To Kill a Mockingbird. The teacher gave 40 honor students each a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. Kids go home and read it, test in 2 weeks. Well, everybody here knows what happened. He took a survey, only 2 kids read the book. What did the other 38 kids do? They went online, I hear Spark Notes, the whole drill. And they all passed the test. But clearly, they have cheated themselves out of the wonder of reading. What I'm doing is, since I know that most of my kids will not read at home, they're going to read an hour a day with me. Even when we travel and we're on the road, we still read together every day. I want the kids to understand reading is not a subject. It's not a subject. It's like breathing. So what I would tell this teacher, even with struggling students, there are great books to read for even the most beginning of readers. No matter what you're reading, whether it's picture books, you want to show them, and also make sure, if at all possible, don't read to the students. It's not with the teacher with the book in her hand. That's not reading, that's listening. Every kid has a book. I read a passage, you read a passage, she reads a passage. And the beautiful thing is, because I know my students, when you have a struggling reader, you give them something very easy to read. When you have a more difficult passage, you throw it at one of your better readers. But everybody should be having fun. I read with enormous passion every day of my class, and whether you believe this or not, it's true. When we finish and I say, I'm sorry guys, we have to close our books, the kids groan audibly. Oh, what's going to happen? Well, come back tomorrow, we'll see. It's like doing a cereal. Reading should be fun.
Reading should be fun. I like that. Any other questions from the audience?
Hi, thanks. I think I know what you're going to say because I've read your other books, but I'm just curious. What do you do when you're a younger teacher with a family to teach on the level you teach at, to try to build this kind of community and all the hours you put in? Right. How do you do that and juggle raising kids and having a family?
Well, first of all, don't. Okay? Okay. And, you know, please understand this. You mentioned the level that I'm at. I'm not at any special level. Believe me. I have to tell you something funny. The kids were in, when we were in Missouri, we went to the Ulysses S. Grant Historic Site. And we walked in, and there was a very nice ranger there. And she saw me, and she started crying. And she's like, oh, my God, it's you. And the kids were looking at her like, what is your problem, lady? Like, it's just Rafe. I'm not that special, believe me. But what I would tell you is this. There are great teachers who have to run out at 2:30 or 3. You got little ones at home. You can still have discussions with your children about integrity. You can tell children, even in a short amount of time, yes, we're going to work hard on the test, but it's not everything. You can try to make your lessons relevant. That's doable. Travel around the world, don't worry about it. You know, crazy Shakespeare play after school, don't worry about it. But you can have those talks about honor and decency with your students every day. You can be a great role model. And I want to tell you something about your family. I think that when you tell the kids, I'd love to stay with you, but I have to get home to my family, I think that will bring you closer to your students. Many of my students adore my family, and they love it when I have to rush off with my family because I'm that role model. If you want to see the real brains behind my class, and my wife Barbara sitting over here tonight, the kids like me. They love her. She's the one that they all love. So that's what I would tell a young teacher. You saying on my level, don't do what I do. I'd like to ask you a question. Tell me something you love to do in your own life. Tell me a hobby of yours. What do you like to do?
My kids and I all love to read together.
Then I hope if you're in a school where you've got to read the Basel Reader or whatever, fine, you don't want to get in trouble. Maybe twice a week have a lunchtime reading hour with a book that you love to read. You can do that during the school year, teach the kids how much fun reading can be, and still get out after school to get home to your family. That you can do. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Naeem, and I'm a former fourth grade teacher. And I wanted to return to this idea about failures and that how that kind of activity, that one can gain insight, and we have to be okay with it because from any failed activity, there is still growth to be had. But how can we be okay with failures when the system that evaluates us so rigorously says that these tiny failures that we should be okay with are not okay by these standards, such as a CSAT score or adequate yearly progress? So how do we learn to be okay with it?
Best question of the night. It's a great question. You know, I have a line in the new book. Teaching hurts, get used to it. It's painful. And it's painful dealing with people who are judging you, who have no clue what they're talking about. There's a story in this book. Let me tell you about real pain. I knew a woman named Faye Ireland. She taught, I could be off by a year, either 44 or 45 years. When I was a young teacher, my first year, I was put in an upper middle class school. I thought I was a real good teacher. I wasn't. Anybody could have taught these kids. After school, they were all off to ballet classes and violin lessons. They all had 2 parents who went to Stanford. You know the kids I'm talking about. So Faye was at my school. No teacher could have been more different than me. This was old school disciplinarian. But you know what? She was great. Her kids loved her. She was so strict, you'll love this. She was so strict that when the kids wrote an essay, if they made a mistake, she did not allow them to erase. They had to start again, okay? But they loved her. They really loved her, and her kids did well. In her 4th decade of teaching, as the neighborhood got a lot worse, and she started dealing with a lot of kids who couldn't speak English, rather than get them ready for tests, she spent all her day just talking with them, teaching conversational English. When the Los Angeles Times, and I can't tell you how much Faye helped me. When I was a young teacher, she would take me out to dinner. Rafe, here's what you're doing wrong. But she never changed me. She never said you have to do it my way. She let me be me and gave me great advice. I can't tell you how many bad days I had when Faye put me back together. Seriously. I can honestly say that almost every kid in my class who does well, they owe her a debt of gratitude. On her last couple of years of teaching, when she didn't get the kids ready for tests but wanted to teach them just basic English, the LA Times printed everybody's test score and rated her as a least effective teacher after 44 years of absolutely brilliant teaching. She has hundreds of letters from former students, thank you, thank you, thank you. And this was the thank you she got. What I would say to you is this, and I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer. I nod my head when these people say, you're not good, thank you very much, and I tune it out. I go to my fellow teachers, shake my head, and then go back to my classroom and do the best I can. I cannot let people who couldn't do my job judge me. I can't do it. If you're a fellow teacher and you say, Rafe, you might want to do it this way, I'm listening. But no one gets to tell me what to do who has no idea what they're talking about. It's very painful. Do I worry about my test scores? I do. Am I worried that if the kids go down, people are going to go, oh, look at that guy, well-known teacher, he's not so good. Of course I worry about that stuff. But I won't let it change who I am. I have to be very tough about it. That's the only solution I know.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions? Over here in the back.
Well, I think your message is both inspiring and very, very important, especially for new teachers. But I've been teaching 17 years, and your message is very important. I teach 5th grade as well. But there's one gnawing question I have. It deals with Catcher in the Rye. How do you deal with a prostitute?
Sonny, let me tell you something. If you've ever walked along Western Avenue towards Hobart, I don't have to tell my kids about prostitution. If you've met some of the members of their families, I don't mean to be a smartass about it. There's actually, this is important. I'm a very lucky guy, almost a made man in the mafia. I've been there so long, there's almost, you can't believe what we get away with. When we did The Tempest last year, if you know the play, Caliban is, he's oppressed. So we did Bob Marley's Get Up, Stand Up. And the kids all pulled out huge marijuana joints and were faking smoking on stage. It was hysterical, okay? And even my principal almost fell off his chair laughing. What I would suggest to 5th grade teachers who say, I'd love to do a Catcher in the Rye, but the content, I would get heat from the parents, I get heat, then don't do it. Find a great book that isn't so controversial. There are so many great books that are not controversial that you can still have the same effect. That would be my suggestion.
But I still want to know how you...
I tell them what a prostitute is. I tell them. When we did Hamlet, I taught them about incest. I taught them about Gertrude, and I taught them about Oedipus. I taught them the whole thing. I just tell them. I use the advice that Atticus Finch gives his brother in the book To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't go into great detail. You know, if I say a prostitute will sell herself and sell her body so a man can make love to her. I don't take out the Kama Sutra and show them positions. I think some of my kids might take it out, but that's a whole other. I think if you have a really good relationship with your students that's based on trust, you can talk about anything. I really do.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm Brian Morita, fellow LUSD teacher. Just want to know your thoughts on the district's decision to purchase iPads for all students. Do you see it inhibiting or enhancing what you do with students and student learning?
I think if all the kids have iPads, it depends on the teacher and it depends on the students. I will say this. I like technology. I don't love it. It was funny. I was on NPR this morning and I said a line because some kid called up and they were very upset with their teachers going, you know, we kids, we know more technology than the teachers do. We're so more far advanced. They should get rid of all these teachers that aren't keeping up with the technology. I pointed out that Shakespeare wrote Hamlet with a goose feather. I don't want the kids to think that being technologically savvy indicates that you're a scholar. It doesn't. Okay? Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence without an iPad. So I don't really think the iPad will make a huge difference. It might look cool, and the kids might be able to do some cool things. I don't think it will make them better writers. It might even make them worse writers. I don't think it will increase their ability to do mathematics. I don't. I think you have to study hard. And I think a lot of the technology is a gimmick. I've had parents actually say to me, you know, my child isn't reading well, what computer should I buy? And Brian, I say, well, a library card is cheaper, you know, and it works for me. So do I use technology? I do, particularly in the music, because it helps us score the music and print out music, and you can separate the music. And we can use technology now. When my kids learn harmonies, we record all the different parts on various discs, so a child can go home and when he's singing, he can put on headphones and sing with his classmates even when they're not there. That's when I think technology is a wonderful thing. But I have to tell you, rather than get everybody an iPad, I'd rather get every school an orchestra. I think it would be a lot better.
Thank you for your question. We've got time for a couple more if anybody else has a question. Up here in front. We'll get you the microphone. It's coming.
Hi. Since I think it's pretty common knowledge at this point that the system is dysfunctional, I was just wondering, since you've had to deal with it for so long, do you have any ideas about how to change it? I mean, you're right in the middle of it, so I'd love to hear any comments you have about that.
I don't. I would love to give you a pearl of wisdom. I'm the Orwell fan, and I'm also a great fan of The Who. And for those of you who know Pete Townshend's great line, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. I don't think it's going to change. I think the person who makes the difference is the individual teacher. Anybody here ever see the great film Searching for Bobby Fischer? If you haven't, there's a wonderful moment I hope every teacher watches. There is a moment when there is a chess teacher in the film, and he's had a bad relationship, a tempestuous relationship with a student, but they've gotten it together now, and this little boy, he's a 5-year-old prodigy, is playing in a tournament on television, and the teacher is watching him, and the moves are going back and forth, and the little boy's opponent makes a mistake. And the teacher is talking in his mind, and he goes, look close, Josh, you've got him. It's 10 moves away, but you've got him. If you do this and this and this and this, you can win the match. And the boy is just looking. He doesn't move. He's just looking. And all of a sudden, the teacher straightens up and goes, he's got it. And the father goes, how do you know? And he goes, he's got it. A teacher knows. A teacher can read body language. A teacher can find out if a kid's been having a bad day. No computer, no test will ever take that moment away from us. And for me, although I can change the system, you're looking at someone who's been honored by people like the Dalai Lama. Nothing is better for me than looking at that kid's eyes when they've got it. It's still the highest high for me. I don't think the system will ever get better. It may get worse. But as long as we're in the classrooms, our children's lives, those children's lives can be better. And that's why I walk into that room every day. I'll be there at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for all of your comments and questions. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Rafe, for being here.
Thank you
It's been a
all. You've
pleasure.
been wonderful. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.